For those who don't know me, my name's Rod Schneider. I'm the Queensland Director of the ATA, mainly as a result of a late night conversation at a bar with John Humphreys, which I swear I can't remember. But anyway, thanks for having me along. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you haven't seen it, next door there are some exhibits by the sponsors. I want to give a particular mention to Connor Court. There's lots of books out there published by them. They are defenders of freedom, so please go, have a look, help them out and buy one of their books. Today, this next panel session is going to be about federalism. My favourite part of competitive federalism is that when it turns 1:32 in the morning down here, I am no longer allowed to enter a licensed premises. But thankfully, I can leave this state at the end of this weekend and go back to places which will serve me alcohol all hours of the weekend. To get started, we're going to hear from Sinclair Davidson. Sinclair, as many of you know, is from RMIT Uni. He runs the Cadillac blog. But here today to defend an allegation from Jim Allen that he is a Gillard Uber centralist, Sinclair Davidson.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you all like my t-shirt. Quite appropriate. Come on this side, can't see it. Sorry, there we go. I said to John Humphreys, yes, I'm happy to come and talk about something economic-y, and next thing I was on a panel talking about federalism. So I thought, well, something close to my heart, should we abolish the Commonwealth? And the answer, of course, is yes. But that's just not my unvarnished opinion. I've actually got good reason for thinking all of that. And we're going to start off by explaining some law to the lawyers. The philosophy of federalism from a top-down approach is we're all coming together. And this is recognizing the legitimacy of a central government to tell us what to do. Or conversely, we're all holding together. So we want to decentralize because we want to stay together, but we don't want the federal government telling us what to do. We want local governments telling us what to do. So that's what you've got to keep at the back of your mind. These ideas about something pulling us together, something pushing us apart, and federalism is the equilibrating mechanism that makes all of that happen. Some models of federalism. The one that we've got is called competitive federalism. Different levels of government all do the same thing, taking our money, telling us what to do. Nobody's responsible for anything. Everybody blames everybody else. That's what we end up with. We're supposed to have either dual federalism, so non-overlapping things, or competitive federalism, which isn't actually practiced. So now, being an economist, we'll start with somebody sensible, George Stigler, who had two beliefs about this sort of thing. He said, first of all, participatory democracy is a good thing. And I know there's some hostility to the ideas of democracy in some libertarian circles, but democracy is a good thing. Generally speaking, the government, David, where are you? The government is your agent. They do what we tell them. So this view, Stigler said, is more or less correct, but only works when we're close to the decision-making process. At the same time, Stigler also said there are states' rights. So people in their own locality have the right to make their own decisions about things that affect their lives. And that's, I suppose, true too. So these two beliefs give rise to two possible outcomes. The first one is economic decisions should take place at the lowest level of government, consistent with effectiveness. And allocated efficiency should occur at the lowest level of government, consistent with economic efficiency. So far, so good. Everybody thinks, wow, how cool is that? It begs the question. And the question being begged is, why have higher levels of government? If we know that local governments are good, why do we want to have higher levels of government? Please, I'm not referring to what we call local government here in Australia. When the revolution comes, they will be shot after Timmins. We're not talking about that sort of, we talk about government close to the people. And so why would we have higher levels of government at all? And the answer normally goes along the lines of, we need federalism to manage diversity across a large geographic area. Well, okay, that's fine. And we say, well, hang on, why don't we just have lots of little states? We don't need to have one big state. We can have lots of little states with smaller governments close to the people. And the answer to that question is twofold. One, people say something along the lines of a small state implies a small market. And secondly, they're going to say something along the lines of their economies of scale in national defense. It's expensive to kill foreigners, and so we need to have a big government to do that. Okay, all good. So, you say, well, all right, so then why don't we simply have a large number of small states with a customs union and a mutual defense pact? NATO seems to work reasonably well, I suppose. So, the answer to this now starts to get a bit more complicated, because now we get into the kinds of things which Hayek and Ronald Coase and Oliver Williamson have been talking about for a long time. There are enforcement costs. Okay, we've got to monitor this customs union. We've got to make sure that the people in Victoria and New South Wales don't cheat when they're not supposed to be putting tariffs on our goods and services, what have you. So there are enforcement costs. These enforcement costs are expensive, and historically they would have been very high, and certainly from an historical perspective, confederations have tended to fail. Okay, so are these arguments about historical enforcement costs being high justifying some sort of federation and empire and all these other things that states have gotten up to? Are they still true today? And the answer is probably not. There's probably some other things at work too. For example, the European Union started off as a customs union, is evolving into a federation. So what can be done? Well, what can be done, I'm going to say, due to inertia, socialization, status quo bias, all these bad things, we are probably stuck to a large extent with existing federations. And you know the idea, I am not a Victorian, I am an Australian. How great is Australia? Well, Australia is very great because Australia, because Don Bradman, because the vibe of the thing. Okay, we're all into it. So, okay. So there's probably a whole bunch of reasons. We've all been socialised, status quo, we're all kind of lazy. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So we're probably stuck with existing federations. But what we can do, we can encourage secession at every opportunity. So when the Western Australians say to us, if you don't give us more money, we will secede, you say, ciao, yes. We will see you later, nice knowing you guys. You can even say, you will be better off without us. We will be better off without you. This is a very rare instance where you will have an economic Pareto improvement. So we should encourage secession at every opportunity. In the Australian Federation, Western Australia can secede if they want to. They actually wanted to vote to secede. Everybody ignored them, they ended up not going. Other states to secede would require the constitution to be amended. That's quite difficult. There would be a majority of votes in the majority of states. We should discourage centralisation at every opportunity. So when the Scots want to leave the UK, we should say, fine, good, go. When the Greeks want to leave the European Union, we should say, fine, good, go. That would be a disorderly exit. It's not going to be pretty. When the United Kingdom wants to exit the European Union, we should say, good, go. What's going to cause excitement later on is we should also encourage fiscal self-sufficiency. States in Australia should raise their own revenue for their own spending. This is what it looks like at the moment. Well, I lied. This is what it looks like until the middle of the noughties. From Federation to the present, the black line is the state's own revenue, and the red line, or the pink line, depending on how you look at these things, is the Commonwealth's revenue. Now everybody says, gee whiz, the Commonwealth gets all the money because of the GST. Well, that's not true. The GST is here. Okay. So we had massive fiscal, horizontal inequity before the GST came in. All right, just looking at this slightly different. The sort of tan is the Commonwealth government's taxation, and the tan on the other side is what they spend on stuff they can spend on. The puce or purpley stuff on the left-hand side is the taxation which the states raise. The puce and purpley stuff on the right-hand side is the stuff which the Commonwealth, which the states spend. And then local government, which is actually derived power from the states, are the blue stuff on the top. There is a massive vertical imbalance. What does that mean in practice in federations? That means we share money in intergovernment transfers. The theory of intergovernment transfers developed by James Buchanan, the communist, In 1950, the theory of fiscal federalism, he basically said that we've got unequal states in a federation. You can work out a scheme to equalize them on a fiscal basis and equalize them on an expenditure basis. And he makes the argument that citizens of low-income states, Tasmania, Northern Territory, all these places, possess the right that their states receive money to provide them with fiscal equality. That right is nowhere written down in the Constitution that I can work out. But he says this is not subsidy, this is not charity, which is, of course, totally subsidy and charity. Important bit, he writes this in 1950, both Australia and Canada have adopted Buchanan's theoretical approach. Fast forward 51 years, Buchanan writes a paper where he says, my analysis can't be challenged, it's perfectly correct. And I make that argument myself from time to time, so I'm quite sympathetic. And then he says, but I recognize after 51 years there have been some practical problems. And then he says, okay, but I don't understand these practical problems. I haven't looked into it. I've never investigated, despite the fact that he lived in Virginia, just a couple of hours drive, maybe 3 or 4 hours drive from the Canadian border. He could have gone to Canada and found out how his ideas had worked in 51 years. He actually made an argument in 2002 that he hadn't thought about it at all here in Australia. Oh yeah, I know you guys did something like what I said, but I've got no idea how it worked out. Well, how did it work out? Well, not well. But he says, look, I'm going to remake my arguments completely ignoring the empirical evidence of the failure. Now, Jim was emailing me during the week, telling me there's an opaque formula that nobody knows about how the Commonwealth Grants Commission actually allocates GST revenue. Yeah, no, we'll get to that. I'm right and you are wrong. You hear this all the time. Okay, so there's the...
speak last.
Here's the formula. Okay, so there's a per capita grant to each person in Australia where they work it out on a state basis. And what happens is that the important figures here are that gamma, that funny Y-shaped affair if you don't know your Greek, and the rho, which is that funny P-shaped affair at the end if you don't know your Greek. The gamma and the rho tell us about the cost disability in the state, and the rho tells us about the revenue disability in the state. So if it costs you more in your state to present goods and services to the citizens of your state, you get a kick up. If you don't have the ability to raise your own revenue in your state compared to the average states in Australia, then you get a bit of a kick up. Or if you've got too much money, you get a kick down, and so on and so forth. These slides will be up on the CAT at some point. There's all explained, but I'm running out of time. I've already spoken far too long. These guys were conspiring to speak for a little period of time. I've decided I will talk for as long as I like, because it comes out of your time. Here's the problem. Here is the problem. In 2011-12, WA thought they were going to get a population ranking of 0.71. There it is. Yep. Okay. They thought they were going to get a rating of 0.71 per person in Western Australia. That's how the money was going to be distributed. And going forward in 2014-15, in the current financial year, they thought that number was going to be 0.64. Mr. Hockey's last terrible budget, not his very last, of course there's another terrible budget coming, but Mr. Hockey's last terrible budget had this table, the same one from before, whereas in 2011-12 they were expecting 0.64. This year, this financial year which is, they actually got 0.37. So they got half, more or less, of what they were expecting. Now, to be fair to the Western Australians, that does make it very hard for them to plan. Okay? To be unfair, of course, planning is bad. Cut spending, it's always a good idea. Okay, so what are the problems with horizontal fiscal equity? First of all, it creates disincentives for factors of production to move from areas where they are lowly valued to where they are highly valued. Because you know you can be poor and unemployed in Tasmania, and don't worry, the Victorians and the New South Welshmen will give you money. It also distributes growth dividends. Our Western Australian friends have done very well out of the mining boom, but nonetheless it's been taken off of them and distributed to Tasmania and South Australia and the Northern Territory and the ACT, where all the rich people live in the ACT. That also is a disincentive for the state governments to try and do better. The other problem is it actually takes money off poor people in, say, Western Australia and gives it to rich people in South Australia if they're worried. It actually encourages all sorts of strategic rent-seeking behaviour, which is horribly inefficient. Those calculations, that formula, which my good friend Judith Sloan said is completely opaque. Well, she's not a graduate of RMIT, so I understand one doesn't understand. But that particular formula suffers significant methodological and data problems. There's a lag and all these things, which of course the Western Australians are complaining about. And it undermines any movements towards competitive federalism, which really is the only story that really justifies federalism, is that states would compete and drive good policy. When you have a fiscal horizontal equity system like we have, it actually drives and encourages mediocrity, and that's more or less what we see, what we get all the time. And the only way you can ever get rid of it, because once you've got a federation, you're always going to have something like this. The way you get rid of this is you get rid of the Commonwealth and you say, you guys have to stand up on your own hind legs and make your own way in the world. Thank you.